Nice.
All right, let's actually. No, I'll just okay. So we're live here, but let's just do some prep. So as usual, I think I've got more notes than the show can handle. Um,
That's good though.
Help me trim it down. Um, I think we'll probably have a pretty good, like normal 45 minutes for Spider-Man in total. There's
Sure.
probably enough. I mean, it's not like thematically something we're gonna spend a bunch of time on. But we'll go back and forth, normal amount there. Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I had initially written up an intro that mentioned we would talk briefly about some other stuff like Captain America, Transcendence, and Draft Day. Like I wrote up a whole Draft Day thing, but then didn't get a chance to do it for that radio show because
Oh,
everything
for
was
the
just
show. Yeah.
yeah.
I think you should talk about the fact that you're on the radio. I mean, just at least drop it in, you know?
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Like at least during the how are you doing part, you know?
Yeah. Well, if I don't, then you can maybe prompt me a little bit,
Okay.
because I think it's gonna be until we get to Spider-Man, this is gonna be really me heavy. Because if we talk about any of those movies, it's all me. And then
Right.
I've got another. Then we got the news, which I've written a few things that's real fast. But the only two things I'm dead set on are obviously doing Spider-Man, and I wanna pour one out for Bob Hoskins.
Yep.
And I've got I wrote a little thing down, and then that hopefully leads. The segue is not great, but it ends with here's to the pencil pushers. So
Nice.
yeah, so I want to do that, and that's probably going to be at least a 5 minute bit, probably about 5 minutes. Um, and then I've just got a handful of news items, and then we've got what could be 5 minutes apiece on Winter Soldier, Transcendence, and Draft Day, or we could do none of those three things. Um, the two that are easiest to get rid of are Transcendence and Draft Day, though I have. I mean, maybe like if I do talk about being on the radio, I'll just throw out a couple of thoughts about Draft Day, and that overall it's not worth it. Um,
Okay.
and
I was
all
just gonna say, like, when you were talking about the stuff you've been watching, I mean, we're still gonna. That's part of the shtick, yeah.
like what have we been checking out?
Yeah.
You hit on those things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, just like maybe one or two little bullet points about it. Just
yeah,
saw these couple things, and because they're, I mean, you weren't really too keen on them, so don't really
mm.
give them too much time, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing about Transcendence is it's such a conversation piece.
Yeah,
It's
I was
subject
actually
matter.
surprised. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that.
Did you see it?
No, I was just so
Oh, okay.
surprised at how horrible it got reviewed. Like
Yeah.
everybody was just saying it was a piece of junk.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to spoil that entire movie
Okay,
in that discussion. So we'll
dude, that's like if you're gonna spoil something, that's like
just do it.
fodder. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah. So I mean, maybe we touch on Draft Day because you asked about radio, and then what have you been? Have you got a couple things to talk about, like what you've been watching?
um, shoot. You know what? Let me. I guess I could come up with a couple here if you give me a second.
Uh,
I got
yeah.
a couple things that I recorded that I've seen. Let's see. I could talk about Hannibal.
Okay. Definitely, I want to know
Um,
about that for sure.
let's see. Yeah, see, I just haven't been watching a ton of movies. I watched Pacific Rim recently.
Rewatched it, right? Or had you not
Yeah,
seen it before?
rewatched. I tried to get Lisa to watch it, and she thought the first part was awesome, and then she fell asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I got like a couple movies recorded, but I just haven't seen them yet. Yeah, shoot. I guess I could touch on Hannibal,
Okay,
and then,
cool. Well, and you
yeah.
saw True Detective, so you can mention that.
Right. I think we were going to talk
Which
about that. Yeah.
we need to do. Well, eventually, we need to do just a whole show on it, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I started looking into some of that stuff, man. They really did some layering with that, and I think that's
Mm.
something needs to be appreciated, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so order then. We'll do the intro. How are you? What are you drinking? And then you want to do, what have you been watching?
Yeah. Yeah, do you think, yeah, let's do that, and then you can jump into the news pieces, and then, I mean, like, I'm hoping, like, 20 minutes tops, we're into the Spider-Man bit, right? What do you think?
Okay, yeah, let's keep comments really brief then on what we've been watching, except for like Transcendence might be a little, unless you wanted to do um some like mini parlays after the news prior to Spider-Man that would run a little bit longer. See, this is why I was saying like maybe we've got
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah, I think if we just keep, like, honestly, if you're saying draft day, I mean, you could just mention that
Yeah,
you
I'll
talked
keep that
about
very
draft day,
short. Yeah, I'll
and then
keep that
say
short.
blah 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 about it, and then just go, you know what I think is more of a conversation piece, and then go into transcendence.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that'll put those two at maybe 7 minutes if we have a conversation about transcendence. You
Okay.
know, like if that
Yeah.
goes long,
Yeah.
and then we got news before that, so that could be 10 minutes getting up to there, and that's why I'm saying 20 tops.
Okay.
And then we're at Spider-Man, you know? Well,
Yeah.
and then I guess my little brief shtick on Hannibal.
Yeah. Do you want? Well, then once I'm done with what I'm drinking, I'll come to you for what you've been watching, and then you throw up. You say now, I know you've seen at least whatever, but you segue back to me with the radio and draft day,
Yep.
and then I'll treat that as my beginning of what I've been seeing. Now, do you want me to end that? If I do Transcendence, Draft Day and Transcendence, do you want me to mention also Winter Soldier and have a brief discussion there? Maybe push it to 10 minutes, or do you want to skip that altogether?
Yeah, shoot, I honestly I feel like it deserves its own parlay, like
Yeah,
with
sure.
everything that everybody's saying about it, and the fact that I feel like it should be retarded,
Oh,
and the
man.
fact
Oh,
that it's not according to the entire population.
right. Everyone.
I think, like I think we could have a parlay about it, and plus,
Sure.
if it's really that good, I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
So
and that'd be a great parlay for, maybe like a just, hey, it's an older movie, so we're just gonna jump in and start talking about this and not do
yeah,
like a whole episode. We just get on and have a conversation about it.
yeah,
All
and
right.
have like a 30-minute deal where we just like we jump in. What are you drinking? And
Yeah.
let's talk about Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll mention
Uh,
Winter Soldier as a recommendation, but we're gonna actually maybe dedicate more time to it another time.
yeah, I mean, we could kick off something with that. Like you recommend it, and I'll be like, really?
Yeah.
I thought the first one was terrible, and you'd be like, well, then we definitely need to parlay it. So that's our assignment for next week.
All right. Suck it. Um. All right. Sounds good. Um. So then we'll get into news, and I guess we'll do the end of the news. We'll jump into Bob.
Yep.
All right.
I mean, I wouldn't use those words, but
Right.
yeah.
Phrasing. Oh my gosh, which
Yeesh.
reminds me of Archer. Have you've watched Archer, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that show so much.
Yeah, I loved it. We binged watched it though, and so it kind of
Okay,
like
sure.
became like a thing that like I can handle bits and pieces of now. And then like I'm really not trying to bring it down, but like I went to the last place I was working. This dude that worked there
Hmm.
was this total like a-hole, cynical little bitch about everything, and that was his favorite show. And I
Okay.
was just like, really, you just ruined Archer for me. And I'm like, I'm not kidding. Like everybody in the office thinks he just is a little bitch about everything.
So sometimes I try to have little pieces of these pre-show conversations and let them be kind of our dry open. Uh, Would you prefer me not use that clip for the cold open?
Mm. I mean, I guess I don't know which part you would use, but
The
I'm
whole
sure.
thing where you talk about a cynical little bitch at your former work that loved Archer.
And how he ruined it for me.
That's right.
Oh, that's a tough call.
All right. Well, if you're feeling
Sheesh.
on the
I'm
fence,
just
I
trying to
won't do
think.
it.
I don't know that there's anything else that would be worthwhile.
In this, as far as the
Yeah,
cold
like
open.
the preamble we got going here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's at least get our garage band going here.
Yep. All
All
right.
right. I'm recording.
Let's
You have
pray
to say
this
it like that.
records.
I'm
Come
recording.
on, 2009.
Oh man, really?
And we're recording.
Oh, it's
Fantastic.
brilliant, brilliant. All right, let's sync in 3, 2, 1. Sound pretty
Man,
good.
that sounded like spot on.
Spot on. I like that sound.
Yeah, my glass is looking a little bit low, though. So I'm gonna go fill it up. If you want to use that for the preamble,
That's it.
like seriously, the opening sound should be the sound of a bottle opening.
Right. And Mike pouring himself 4 fingers.
Well, they're 4 of my kids' fingers, so it doesn't really matter.
All right then. Shall we get the show on the road?
Yep. I got my shot for Bob here.
Excellent. I'll be pouring those live.
Sweet.
All right. And I did take the shot out last time when we did for Gandolfini and poured it out on the ground. I wasn't sure
Did you?
yeah, maybe I should. I don't know where I would pour it in the house here. I mean, how am I supposed to pour a shot out not on the floor? And I feel like it's disrespectful to pour it in the garbage can, even though it wouldn't hurt the garbage can. I just don't want to pour out an honorary shot into the can. All right,
that's good.
Let's do this. You like that?
Well, dude, hang on, I missed it. What was that?
Were you watching the video? You weren't watching the video. That's okay.
Oh, well.
I don't expect that of you. All right. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the Film Parley, a conversational podcast about movies and things related to movies. My name is Tim Dennison.
And I'm Mike Laswell.
And we're back again after a long break following our gigantic Noah podcast, our podcast that was 2 podcasts.
It was.
On the biblical epic. This week we're going to be talking about a few films that have come out since then, maybe a little bit about Transcendence, a little bit about Draft Day perhaps, Captain America even in there, but primarily we are gathered here together today to discuss the amazing Spider-Man 2, which just opened a couple of days ago, and actually, Mike, I don't know if you saw, it looks like it's going to do about $92 million for the weekend.
I hadn't caught any of the numbers, but that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it seems like a really healthy outing for them. We'll also look at some more of the major news events to pop up in the last few weeks in Hollywood, and possibly make a few recommendations based on what's out there on Netflix and whatnot. But before we get to any of that, Mike, how are you, and what are you drinking?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because that always gives me permission to take a little drink. Because I know the show's started, so I don't feel like I'm drinking beforehand. Tim, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Good.
I'm coming up on the end of my training for my marathon.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you how that's going.
Yeah, it's brutal, man. There's a lot of hard miles that I've done, so
yeah,
I'm looking forward to
Do you have a,
take.
a total number of miles that you have logged since the beginning of your
Yeah.
training in earnest? What is that number?
So we started off. I'm running with a friend of mine named Ross, and a couple of years ago we started running a couch to 5K because neither one of us had run even that far
Mm-hmm.
ever. And so we downloaded an app called Run Meter. So there's a little plug for you guys. And it logs all the activity, and you can group it according to whatever training you're doing or whatever. So for this Leadville training, I didn't put last week's. I haven't checked it since Tuesday, I should say. So right now I'm at 289 miles.
289. And then you ran like 14 yesterday, didn't you?
Yeah, I ran 14 yesterday. So
So you were
yes, I'm
north.
lazy. I'm lazy enough not to do the math for the 14 I did on Saturday, and then the 6 that I did, the 20 miles added to 289
Okay.
is 306. No, it's not
Oh,
306.
you're horrible at math. Well, it's north of 300. Anyway,
Yeah.
you magnificent bastard.
Yeah,
It's
so
just
that's a lot.
a huge achievement, and well, good luck on your continued training. So that's happening June 14th.
Yep.
It's
And
just
you're all
around the
welcome to
corner.
join us.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, I will be. I mean, not for the
Yes.
event, but I did just book my plane tickets or ticket out to your neck of the woods, and I'm gonna come up to
Yes.
Leadville and probably like drink beer and eat ice cream while you run 24 miles.
26.2.
26.2 miles
I will be running all of it, not just
over
24.
right. That would be such a letdown. I made it to 24. Personal victory.
Yeah. Go me. Let's go home.
All above 10,000 feet elevation, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so we gain, I want to say 6,000. I don't have the chart in front of me, but there's an elevation chart that you can find if you look up the Leadville Running Series. And we go up and down over 6,000 feet just on the front half, and then we retrace it because it's an out and back. So there's a lot of elevation gain and change, and it's going to be really painful. And I'm really excited to do it. So, yeah, thanks. I'm glad we could talk about that. It's
Awesome.
therapeutic. But let me pass it back to you. Before I do, though, I am drinking. I cracked open a brand new bottle of the Stranahan's Colorado whiskey to kick off tonight's show.
About damn time.
Yeah, because you know what? I haven't had Stranahan's in a long time, and nothing settles me down and picks me up like Stranahan's.
It sounded like a little commercial.
Right?
That was brilliant.
Stranahan's, if you're looking, I'll do some advertising for you.
I love it. Fantastic.
So, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. It's been a good week. I've handed off some assets to a client as part of a rather large project that I am really pleased with, and so anyway, yeah, it was that happened on Thursday, and we kind of had a long weekend with a little bit of celebration and whatnot. I got out today and got to golf with my brother for his birthday. And so yeah, it's been good, and I don't know. Yeah, you didn't ask, Mike, but I'll tell you anyway. I also happen to be drinking tonight. I am drinking. I'm drinking the Bridgeport Kingpin. It's a double red ale. I believe I have had one on the podcast before, and it's my go-to beer in the house right now. For a while, it was Rogue's Dead Guy, and still love the Dead Guy, but the Kingpin is a double red ale. It's pretty hoppy, even more so than whatever a normal red goes for. When I'm out and about, I've been drinking there's a brewery a little east of here called Double Mountain. They make an IRA, I guess India Red Ale, and so that's a red that's got some hops. This is a red that's got even more, and they don't make the IRA for in a 6-pack. So this is my go-to red for the home. I've been really enjoying it. It packs a little bit of a punch at like I want to say 7.5% alcohol.
Oh, oh,
So it's yeah, one beer is typically all you need. Uh, so I drink two or three. No, it's not.
I was
I thought that
gonna
was
say one beer is all you need.
right.
I could go for two or three of those things.
Well, if you can find Bridgeport Kingpin and you're looking for a really full flavored experience, I recommend that one.
Nice. Good
Yeah.
call.
So let's get into the movie business, Mike. It's been a while since we talked. What have you been spending your time in front of the tube doing, or getting out in the theater, whatever it is you've been seeing?
Yeah, I haven't gotten out to the theater for much lately. I got a few things um, scheduled for that I picked up, downloaded for the TV here, but I haven't gotten around to them yet. I'm kind of getting some affairs in order on my end, and then the only thing that I have had time for, well, a couple things I've had time for, and we got to we'll table a couple of them. One of them is Game of Thrones. Obviously, everybody in the world is doing that right now.
Yeah, of course.
The other that I finally caught up with is True Detective, and you and I should do a parlay about that. That whole show just
I agree.
needs to kind of be vetted. Um, and the last one that I could talk about is I guess I could talk about two. One of them, Silicon Valley, that came out on HBO this year. I've watched the three or four episodes that they have released so far, and it's really entertaining, pretty funny stuff. One of the main characters is T.J. Miller, who we have a personal connection with because my wife works with his mom, and so every time he's in town doing his stand-up gigs, she just buys tickets for everybody to support her son. So we've gone out and seen the guy and shook his hand, and the guy's he's pretty hilarious, and he does a great job on the show. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just found out that they are signed up for season 2, so I'm pretty excited to see where they go with
Oh,
that.
fantastic! I hadn't heard that. Carrie and I
Yeah,
have also started. We're through 3 episodes and are similarly
did you enjoy
enjoying it quite a bit. Yeah.
it? Yeah, it's definitely geek humor.
Hmm.
I mean, they're making fun of a certain niche uh, uh, side of life that you don't see very
Hmm.
often, but I think they nail it. So
Yeah. And really,
yeah,
really,
check that out.
kind of nicely fleshed out characters that
Yeah,
don't feel like your normal sort of cardboard cookie cutter cutout. Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, what else you been seeing, watching?
So the other one that I could talk about a little bit was I've been keeping up with Hannibal,
Hmm.
um, season 2. I started season 1, and then it kind of got lost in the mix after about half of the series. I thought they'd canceled it, and I just couldn't find it, and didn't have a ton of time to really fish for it. And then season 2 came out, and I was super excited about it, so I just jumped in to season 2
Hmm.
because I'm cool like that, you know,
Yeah, I hear you.
cool like that. So I've been watching season 2. It is one of the most atmospheric TV shows. I just can't imagine how they put so much art direction and how they pull off. It's super intense, and they pull it off pretty much every week to a T. It's really really well done.
Okay.
There's a couple gripes that I could get into, but I mean, unless you're really serious about Hannibal and want to get into the TV side of it and production side of it, then they're really not anything worth talking about because it's not a detraction. The show's outstanding. So
Cool.
yeah, the recommendation there is if you can stomach some kind of atmospheric, grotesque suspense stuff, I mean, it's still on network prime time, so they don't get away with a lot, but it is kind of gory.
Okay, I did hear that they're kind of between them and the following. They were sort of pushing the boundaries of
Yeah,
what can be seen on broadcast television.
yeah, they are, and um, it's really only, I guess, relegated to the idea of what they do, like the murders that they solve in there that the lead detectives are working on are pretty disturbing to look
Okay.
at, and thematically it's kind of grotesque. So,
Okay.
it's Hannibal Lecter and the whole mythology, and a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff that's led up to the things that you've seen in the theater. So
Cool.
it's pretty.
Awesome. Um, before before I get into what I've been watching, we
Yeah.
got the Q&A panel open for the podcast, Mike,
Oh yeah.
and we have a
Do we
listener
have one?
chiming in with a few questions or comments. So
Is
the
it your wife?
it's not my wife. It
I can't.
is
Oh.
it is one David Whitman. David, thank you for listening.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I want to address David's. There are some.
Yeah.
There's one question, and we're gonna get to that question in just a second. But there's a couple of other comments. I thought we would deal with those in turn. So. The first comment that came across was, I just watched the Spider-Man 2 movie a few hours ago. Amazing movie. Okay. Um, good. We will talk a little bit more about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 in about 20 minutes. I think we'll get there. And I am curious. I'm not sure where Mike stands on the Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Come on.
Okay, he loved it. Uh, I, I might have a slightly different opinion than yours, David, on that particular film. But thank you for your comment. I I I think there are people who really love this love the film. So I'm curious to know why. I don't want to give away my review too much, but
You just tipped your full hand, dude.
that's right. So so thanks, David. Also, I wanted to say. Let's say we've got, or David also chimed in saying that he can't wait for season 5 of The Walking Dead. Mike, are you current with Walking Dead?
No.
Me neither.
There was. I tried to start the recent season, and I just realized that I was way too far gone from everything that's coming out. So, like everything that's gone past that I haven't seen, there's just no way to jump in right now and understand all of the weight and gravity of the story that's going on. So, yeah, you guys aren't current, right?
No, Carrie's not super into that kind of thing. I started some of it, and I thought it was compelling, but there's just so much other stuff going on, and I rarely get an opportunity to watch stuff on my own. I'm frequently watching with my wife, so that's not one we've tried to dig into. So thanks for that, David. Now, before we get to David's third question, which is the actual question, and I think the most important question we have ever received.
This is pretty dire.
Is from so we'll get to that in just a second, but we actually have another listener coming in with a comment and question. This is from Viola Minium. I believe I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
She says, I am a big comic book fan. I love Venom and Carnage.
Yes.
Could we possibly see them together in a Spider-Man movie? Mike, thoughts on that?
I hope that they come out with a spin-off with like a Venom spin-off, because he's the perfect anti-hero. And if anybody could go up against him, it would be Carnage. I think that would be a great show, and I think he deserves a movie all to himself. Venom, go.
We're certainly going to get more Amazing Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, right? Yeah. So, we're still waiting for Mary Jane to make an appearance. I mean, this feels like it's probably on if I had to guess, I'd say 5-film arc at least. Yeah, not that it's necessarily good enough for that, but it's going to make its money, and I think that they're not going to just seal it with a third film, because the second film just served to open the universe. I mean, it's almost like the first 2 films, and we're already talking about the movie, but it's almost like the first 2 films were origin story, and we're now getting able to see like regular adventures in the future. So I think 2 or 3 more films easily, and assuming Sony has the rights to all of those villains, which I assume they would, then I think
I can imagine they would tease a lot.
Entirely possible. I mean, we did do. You're a little bit more strict comic booky guy than I am, Mike. Do you not consider what happened in Sam Raimi's third film to be Venom? I mean, was that when it got dropped on Eddie Brock? Was that or was that not Venom?
No, that was Venom. I mean, that's what they were going for. They called him Venom. That was the whole shtick. But I don't think that Venom is a tough character to do because it relies solely on post-processing and creating that whole avatar.
Sure.
And so I think relying on that, you're going to find people that are going to correlate it to like Spawn and things like that. And I think that there's going to have to be a pretty good outcry or demand for it. And people like Viola here saying that they love it and would love to see it. I think that's going to help push that along. But
you're going Viola, I'm going Viola. One of the two. Hopefully we got that right, Viola.
Phrasing.
So yeah. Viola's next question/comment is, I am stoned and loving this. You guys are awesome. Well, thank you, Viola.
You're awesome.
That gives me an idea, Mike. Perhaps instead of how are you and what are you drinking, since both of our states have legalized smoking marijuana, we could change the segment. How are you and what are you smoking? I have a feeling the podcast would be entirely different under those circumstances.
We would be way more paranoid.
I don't know if I could. Well,
I
don't know.
Do this on Google, man. I think they're listening. Listening.
I think that gives some context to her next question, which is simply Stannis Baratheon.
I think it's more like Stannis Baratheon.
Yeah, man.
With like an understood woot afterwards.
Well, I appreciate you, Viola, for chiming in.
On.
That was great. And Stannis Baratheon. I mean, fair point.
Yeah, well said.
Now, back to David's final question, and thank you, listeners, for chiming in. David says, hey, any advice for my first kiss? About to be 21 in 2 weeks and 6 days? Question mark. Mike,
you don't have to read it like you're.
I'm sorry. Well,
okay,
I
let me just give you the due diligence. Hey, any advice for my first kiss? I'm about to be 21 in 2 weeks and 6 days. Help me out.
Wait a second. The way you read it, that was a statement, but there are clearly 2 question marks at the end, as if he's not certain.
Yeah, but he's talking about it like
21.
he's talking to his buddies. You know, he's not like, this isn't posting. This isn't like group answering. Right. He's not fishing.
All
right. So
my apologies.
You go ahead.
Presenting the statement/question. Here's Mike. I feel like I'm not sure exactly how to approach this because he feels like the information about his age is relevant, and particularly that he's 21. So I'm not sure, David, if you live in a place where no one gets to kiss until they are 21, and then they get guaranteed to kiss when they're 21.
Come on. This is irrelevant. All right, listen up. David, here's the deal. All right, it's all on the shoulders. All right, so what you got to do, you're going to be 21, so you're going to get a couple drinks. This is going to be a lot of fun, but you got to keep those shoulders loose. You know what I mean? Because you're going to make your neck work. So you got to get in there, and when you do, you got to seal the deal, man. You don't like get halfway in there and then question yourself. You go for it. That's the advice. Go for it. Stay loose and have fun.
There you go.
It's advice for a lot of stuff.
Hopefully, David, with a willing partner.
Also important.
Yeah, don't have the drinks and then forget the crucial piece of information that it needs to be with someone who's amenable to locking lips with you. So good luck.
Go get him.
In that endeavor. And I guess I would just say, David, look, if the moment happens before 2 weeks and 6 days from now, don't wait till you're 21. Yep. Go for it, right?
Yep.
And you don't. Now, Mike needs drinks to kiss, I guess, but.
I need drink. I don't need it. I just prefer drinks to about doing anything.
You can, David. You can do it. You can do it. Violet's chiming in. So this is kind of the first time this has happened. So hopefully this is fun for everybody listening on the podcast. Last
Oh
little bit
yeah.
of advice from Violet, David, is David, get lots of mints. And
Yep.
David says, get in there. That's what she said. Bam!
Brilliant.
With that, thank you for questions. And
No, hey,
comments.
also, David, since you're obviously still listening, let us know how it went. The next time we get on here and you're here, tell us how it went, because that would be fantastic.
If you could manage
Like, get a selfie or something.
a stealthy selfie while
Stealthy
you are
selfie, dude.
engaged in your first kiss.
Stealthy selfie. We just invented an app.
The stealthy selfie. Patent pending,
Yeah.
all rights reserved.
Nice.
Copyright Mike Lasswell and Tim Dennison. All right. Real quick, Mike, should we talk about some movies again?
Let's get back to it, man.
All right. I wanted to let you know that that I've been to the theater a few more times than you have in the last couple of weeks here, with differing results in terms of total entertainment value. I got out to see. Now let me explain why. But I went and saw Draft Day. This is the Kevin Costner.
Oh yeah, that was kind of a big deal, right?
Well,
I mean, like
it was big.
Seeing it, yeah.
Yeah, it was a big deal in that I went to see it because a friend of mine here in Portland won a competition to have his own radio show on one of the local sports talk radio stations, and he wanted to have me on to talk about Draft Day. So
Nice.
I had to go see it. And
Sure.
I did, and it's funny because we didn't really talk very much about Draft Day at all. Sports talk radio is not. There's not a lot of listening going on in sports talk radio. There's just a lot of talking.
Yep.
So it was far less conversational than I think you and I are used to. And we briefly touched on that, and then we got to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff, which was great. But in terms of Draft Day, the surprising thing was it's not as just terrible as you would assume from the trailer.
No way.
The trailer looked awful. It looked so bad.
Terrible.
You had to wonder if it was maybe it was a parody of sports films, because it would just cliche after cliche, and Costner was just cold and lifeless and just slurring words out there. It was not good. But the movie, which was also not good, but it wasn't as terrible as I thought it was going to be. And I think the recommendation there is, if you're a Costner fan for whatever reason, or just love all sports movies, it's actually not. It's not terrible. There are some weird things about it. It was directed by Ivan Reitman, like from Ghostbusters 1 and 2. Yeah, I mean he's a comedic director, and then he does Draft Day, which it's billed as a sports comedy drama. It's not very funny. And in the end, rewatch Moneyball or Jerry Maguire. They're both far superior and kind of hit on the same sort of the intriguing parts of this are covered better in those, but like I said, it wasn't dead awful. Something that was dead awful.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
You're telling me that Draft Day wasn't dead awful, and I believe you. Okay. I full on trust your opinion, but you haven't really put it in a range, so it's not dead awful, but it's like god awful, right? Like it's just a step above. Absolutely terrible.
I tend to use god awful as the bottom.
Oh, okay.
Right. So dead awful would be just above that, and it's not quite to that level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like the eclair that's sitting on the very top of the trash can, and it's possibly still okay to take a bite because it's not been in the trash, right? So it's a Seinfeld reference, right? So everybody kind of gets it. Is that what you're saying? It's like right there?
Right, it's the Seinfeld eclair of sports films.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that.
Not fully in the trash can. Got it.
Not fully there. Something that all things considered actually is in the trash can, but is bad in the kind of way people should almost go and see if you've got some extra um, you got some extra time and you can afford to see a bad film. You might check out
Divergent.
Transcendence. No,
What?
Divergence. Um, the
What?
Transcendence was probably easily I'd say the biggest disappointment of the year so far. I mentioned before in a previous podcast, it's
Okay.
the trailer to me it looked fantastic and terrifying, and the movie was not. It gets to the point where I was thrilled and scared at about an hour and a half in. Um, and then it completely undoes that in the final 15 20 minutes. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to spoil all of Transcendence right now. So if you
No.
yeah,
Okay. Because here's the deal.
yeah, because we're not
It.
go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. I was just gonna say it looked like it might actually be a decent, thoughtful film about some of the stuff that might happen.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
like
I thought so
issues that
too,
are
and
on the horizon.
I think it certainly is trying to do that, but it's being directed by Wally Pfister, who is
Poorly named.
right, poorly named phrasing. Um, he has he's been the DP for most, if not all, of Christopher Nolan's films. So the Dark Knight
Oh,
trilogy,
okay.
I think uh, wait, Inception, sorry, as well. And so he's got his chance at directing here, and it just doesn't work. The first 45 minutes is god awful. It is
It's that bad.
it's terrible. The first 45 minutes, 30, 45 felt like 45 minutes, may have been 15. Is them getting Johnny Depp's consciousness uploaded into a computer, right? So they've built this AI and this huge system, and someone else has done the work of actually getting a consciousness sort of uploaded as a natural artificial intelligence, if you will, and so they've done it with a monkey,
Huh.
and now they're going to do it with a human being, and um, so the first
Huh.
45 minutes is them just getting there. But rather than treat that first 45 minutes like it's its own story with its own climax and building the tension and like when it actually happens, like it dropping a bomb on us,
Right.
it they treated it more like, well, we got to get his him uploaded to the computer somehow. So let's just get that done. And everything is just they sort of rush through everything without being speedy about it. There's just no attention to actual performance or drama or anything like that. It's just all of a sudden, we're 45 minutes in, and they've uploaded him, and it's hysterically bad. The way they get him in there and how they're going to pull the plug because they don't think he's really in there, and then he pops up and he is. And anyway, all these moments they
Oh,
try
wow.
to play for drama and emotion, and it doesn't really work. But once he's in there, now his wife believes it's really him, at least at the beginning, and he starts.
See, that seems like where it gets crazy.
Right, that a person, yes, and that is where it gets crazy. It does get
Okay.
interesting. He gets her to, first of all, he buys and sells a bunch of stocks in an instant, right, because he's out there and he's got access to the entire global internet, and so he makes $100 bazillion and then has her go basically and buy this little town in the middle of nowhere and build this underground bunker full of computer and medical equipment, and he creates this nanotech that heals anything and everything, and he ends up bringing in people from the town who are injured, and they end up getting healed, and then what you don't realize is that he's installing
Uh-oh.
himself in all of them.
Whoa.
Right? So that's where you start going, oh crap, this is about to get super scary. He's got a whole bunch of people he can control with his mind, right? And so throughout this whole thing, you've got a terrorist organization that doesn't believe that this is natural, and they're responsible for his death in the first place, and they're trying to find him to put him out of commission, and and the government starts getting involved with that, and so a couple of friends come and visit her. Morgan Freeman comes and visits the compound, and they see just what kind of power he has created for himself, and it's this moment of true terror where you can tell she's actually scared to death and wants to get out of there, and they like write her on a piece of paper and like, get out of here as soon as you can, because they can't say it
Nice.
out loud.
Yeah.
But then little things like he's everywhere, he's got cameras everywhere, but she just opens the slip of paper and reads it by herself out in the world, and it's like they just got done talking about how he's kind of everywhere, and yet she can just open this piece of paper, read it, and anyway, it progresses to a head, and this is where I'm spoil the entire thing here. Throughout the movie, there's this discussion: is it really him? Is it not really him? It can't be him because it's just electrical impulses and all of that. This is not him. He would never go for this kind of power grab, etc., etc., etc. All the way to the point where somehow he builds a new body for himself and comes walking out as Johnny Depp.
Right.
And
that's why it looked awesome.
In the finale of the movie, they figure out how to kill him. It's by inserting a computer virus into her own blood, and then
they do it.
And then getting him to then digitize her consciousness, and then she would give him the virus and his whole global network of himself, and the nanites that are everywhere that he's created will go down. And he, of course, knows it's happening, but ultimately submits to it. And you're thinking, why did he submit to it?
Right.
And so he does, and they're dying. She's gonna die, and he's dying now because the virus is uploaded. And she says, "It was really you. It was really you." And he said, "Yep, the whole time." And then they die. And basically the whole movie, all the tension that comes from he's a mad genius, inhuman, he's going to take over the world, all that stuff that you thought was going on earlier, it wasn't. He was just trying to heal people and
new things
make the world a better place. Yep, and it was really him. So two things are going on there. One, nothing is ever scary at all because he's really just a good guy the whole time. And two, there is no such thing as a human soul. We are the sum total of electrical impulses in our brains, because his entirety was in fact uploaded. So anyway, that's all of Transcendence, and it's a waste of time, except for kind of the discussion to be had afterwards about where they could have gone with it, and I'm glossing over a few of the the little wrestling moments that they go through in terms of the ethics of what's happening and whatnot, and
right.
And the performances are all fine, at least after the first 45 minutes. It's good. So anyway, that was a little bit more on Transcendence that I intended to do, but there it is. It was enormously disappointing.
I'm glad you did. I'll tell you what, though. It sounds like you had really high expectations for Transcendence, and it disappointed. Like you said, it was the biggest disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you had really, really low expectations for Draft Day, and yet you're putting Draft Day above Transcendence, when Transcendence seemed like it had an actual moment where like there was some legitimate emotion being felt. So I'm just going to ask you, do you feel like maybe one of them is still better than the other, and if you put the whole expectation thing aside, if you were just to look at the films, or are you going to say nope, they're pretty much where they are?
The beginning and end of Transcendence are so bad. I actually think Draft Day is a total package a better movie than Transcendence. The middle third of Transcendence is pretty good. Definitely better than anything, but of course they're totally different movies. And yeah, I had hugely low expectations for Draft Day. That's why I don't call it a disappointment, because it was not as bad as I thought it was going to be, and Transcendence was way worse than I thought it was going to be. So in terms of disappointments or the antithesis of disappointments, I did want to mention that Viola commented, Lars von Trier's Nymphomaniac and The Grand Budapest Hotel are hands down the best films of the year so far. She does not see anybody else being able to top those. I I would say Grand Budapest Hotel is probably my favorite film of the year so far,
No
as
kidding.
well. I don't think either of them. Well, I mean, there are probably some of the other than Oscar award shows that might honor maybe Grand Budapest. Do you see Von Trier being able to get any sort of mainstream award for Nymphomaniac? And have you seen Nymphomaniac 2 yet?
Oh, is it out?
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw Nymphomaniac.
Right. Yeah.
And I had some explaining to do. You know, Lucy had some explaining to do.
Right.
But I'll tell you, the first one, part one, is exactly what you imagine it is, and or at least I didn't see a lot more going on. But then after seeing the first one, seeing the trailer for the second one, there's just a ton of intrigue. But even with that, where they're going with this whole thing, I don't see anyone giving anybody awards for a lot of what they're doing. I mean, he's just such a fringe filmmaker that you have to get the respect of the community, the full filmmaking community at large, to kind of to get awards. And I mean, he's doing stuff that I don't think people, anybody at large is any major groups are gonna be celebrating. So,
which, to be fair,
I don't know that I would see it, but I don't know that I'm going to see the second one. But
okay.
It did. Like, I was really intrigued by the trailer for the first
film.
one.
Yeah.
And I was disappointed by it. So,
okay.
Disappointed enough that when you asked me what else I'd been seeing, it totally slipped my mind. So, it kind of tells you where that goes.
Well, but you've already talked about Nymphomaniac. We talked about that in a previous podcast. So. All right. The other thing that I saw in the theater recently was Captain America: Winter Soldier, and we're going to have to do a whole conversation on that some other time. But the short, I mean, if
you could just say
haven't seen it, it's fantastic. Mike, give me a break. Terrible. See, I can understand because you didn't like the first one, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand that position. I get it. It's got a horrible ending. But, I mean, is the ending bad enough for you to say the whole movie is terrible?
Well, the ending is one of multiple decisions and one of multiple instances where the filmmakers do all of the same kind of stupid decision making, where it's just all silly and trite, top to bottom. Like, after he becomes, I guess the first third, where until he becomes like the Ubermensch. Then it becomes a little bit less. The first third is less about the dumb decisions, and it's about his character, which is wonderful what they did there. But the rest of it just really fell really flat for me, and I just can't imagine. Like, I can't imagine anybody saying like, this Captain America is better than like the Fantastic Four series that they did.
I didn't
like those movies are terrible. I think this one is right there with them. I think it's worse than, like, the Fantastic Four are on the bottom. Then you got the original Hulk. Then you have this one, and then you have the other Hulk, and then you have some of the other Marvel films. Like, I just can't imagine that the next one is even going to be anywhere better than that. So I guess that's the gauntlet right there.
Well, here, I mean,
I'm hearing a lot of really positive stuff about it.
Right, but it may not matter, Mike, because there was a ton of positive stuff for the first Captain America film, right? I mean, it was I want to say, I mean, at least I think I was around 80% positive on Rotten Tomatoes. People loved Captain America. It may have been in the 90s, although that might have been Thor.
No way.
Look, do I have to get on Rotten Tomatoes right now? Is that what I have to do?
Yeah, do it.
Well, I'm looking it up, and 79%, right? The first film, 89% the second film. So, like, everybody loved the first one, everybody loves the second one. I don't know, Mike. I would say, yeah, you should probably really enjoy it as an action movie. Maybe you're just not a comic book movie guy, unless it's Spiderman. Like, because Captain America, like, they're great comic book. I mean, because you do jettison some logic when you enter into a superhero
That's true.
movie. And
That's true.
I thought the first I really enjoyed the first one except for the ending. And the Winter Soldier was a blast that we'll have to talk about and see if you agree, and
All right.
maybe flesh out both those movies in another standalone podcast, which we'll get to. My
Let's do that.
goodness, this has gone longer than anticipated.
Yeah.
Let's
We should
let's
jump.
move on to
Speaking of comic book,
a little bit of news. Did you know today is Star Wars Day, Mike?
yes,
You
I
know
had heard.
why
I
it's
can't
considered?
imagine how it's possible that anybody on May 4th can't have heard that today is Star Wars Day. But I will let you enjoy saying it because you're going to enjoy it more than me. Tim, why is today Star Wars Day?
Well, because you get to say, "May the 4th be with you."
In true
There you
geek
go.
fashion with the lisp and everything.
Well, well played. Well played. So, in terms of Hollywood news, probably everybody has heard this at this point. If you haven't, you should know we've discussed the casting rumors for the new Star Wars film, Episode 7, a few times on the podcast. Mostly with regards to Harrison Ford. Will he be in the upcoming film, or will he not be in the upcoming film? And he is officially in, along with Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill. And there is actually a photo circulating of a table read. I will include a link to it in the show notes. It's kind of amazing because Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Adam Driver, Andy Serkis. I forget the kid's name, but he's going to be, I think, along. Let's see. He's the main kid in Attack the Block. I don't know if you saw that one, Mike. But oh my gosh, that's one you've got to check out. Attack the Block is a fantastic little low budget indie sort of alien invasion horror survival movie. It's really great. So anyway, it's just this great cast of people all around J.J. Abrams, and couches and reading the script, which apparently they have. So good news on that front. Hopefully the three of them, the old trio, will get themselves into shape, and it won't be like cringe-inducing when they show up in Star Wars Episode 7. Also, in terms of sequels to films from our childhood, Mike, Goonies 2 is apparently happening.
Oh, fantastic. I was wondering what happened with those guys.
Richard Donner announced he is in fact developing a sequel which will feature at least the four main kids returning home to solve a mystery. For a while there were some rumors that it might be the kids of the kids, and they were on an adventure, and we just see the other adults like briefly. But it turns out that apparently is not the case. It'll be the adults figuring things out. Similarly, a Gremlins reboot has apparently been greenlit, and finally, there may be a Hulk standalone film in Phase 3 of the Marvel master plan.
What?
So somewhere between Avengers 2 and Avengers 3. We've got, I think Ant-Man is coming out in Phase 3. That may be the only, and presumably there's going to be a third Thor film. And I forget what else we can possibly expect to see in that Phase 3, but we may see a Hulk standalone. Because, I mean, he was probably the best part of the Avengers.
It was a lot of fun, that's for sure.
He was a lot of fun. So, and Mark Ruffalo is a great talent. So that's a very short bit of news. Hopefully, but that's all the important stuff that's happening in Hollywood.
Well, it sounds like there was some news that kind of eliminated them from rebooting or making a sequel to another film from our childhood.
Yeah,
and that would be Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, so we did want to honor the memory of one of my favorite actors, Bob Hoskins. He developed Parkinson's disease a few years ago and did succumb to the disease on April 29th. Uh, Bob is a favorite of mine, not because I've seen everything he's been in. Indeed, of his 114 acting credits listed on IMDb, I have actually only seen 6 of his performances. Each of the ones I've seen, of course, is fantastic, from
Right.
Smee in Steven Spielberg's Hook,
Right.
um, to a wonderfully villainous movie mogul turn in the underrated but utterly terrific Hollywoodland. And even in his final performance, he is one of the bright spots in the otherwise, shall we say, problematic Snow White and the Huntsman. Uh,
Oh, I forgot he was in that.
Bob plays one of the dwarves,
Yeah,
uh,
he did a good job.
and it was actually a nice point in that otherwise, well, yeah, not great movie. But it is that single performance that you mentioned that endeared him to me, Mike, and that of Eddie Valiant in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is quite possibly my favorite movie of all time. I saw very few films in the theater as a child, but I made it out to see Roger in 1988. I loved it so much that when I ran for student body president that 6th grade year, and all the candidates had to choose an animated character as their campaign's mascot, I chose the floppy-eared, red suspended wearing Roger. All of my campaign posters featured Roger spitting his trademark stuttered pleas and outright begging for votes. Please vote for Tim Dennison.
Nice. I want to see. I want to see one of those posters.
Alas, perhaps because of such an unbecoming and blatant plea for votes, I lost the election to my friend Adam. Adam and I were fairly evenly matched, I would imagine, in leadership abilities and vision for the future of our school. But
He went
he
with
had the
Jessica
advantage.
Rabbit, didn't he?
He had the advantage in 2 respects. One, he was far cuter than I was, according to the girls, which apparently has something to do with elementary school politics. And he selected Mario from Super Mario Brothers
Oh,
as his
brilliant.
mascot. Mario had been around far longer than Roger, and it was certainly a shrewd move to align himself with the well-known and well-liked plumber. Ironically, Bob Hoskins played Mario in the atrocious film
Oh,
adaptation
wow.
of the video game, which we could do a whole podcast on the stories behind that film. But getting back to my story, I chose Roger because something had happened to me in that theater in 1988 that I had never really been conscious of before. At the time, I would have just said I really liked the movie, but looking back at it now, I realized that it was the first time I was conscious of having been transported somewhere entirely new. Familiar, yes, but completely imaginary and yet completely believable at the same time. Before Roger, I was merely a viewer of films. With Roger, I felt like I was a participant, and I mean the movie here, not the character. It was
Sure.
Roger Rabbit was the film that showed me what movies were capable of. It was the film that began my love affair with movies. Before Roger Rabbit, movies were just something I occasionally engaged in. After Roger, they became an obsession. And again, at the time, I picked the titular character as the embodiment of that magic. But as I grew older and watched the film on VHS every day, I stayed home sick from school, and 5 more times a year. Besides, I slowly realized, as is of course clear to any adult, that the movie is not Roger's story at all. It's Eddie Valiant's. Eddie was my first experience of an anti-hero, of a hero that gets redeemed out of his own destruction. If he possessed the characteristics of a traditional hero, they were all buried beneath the pain he endured from the death of his brother and the alcoholism that followed. When we meet Eddie, he is bitter and cynical and drunk. He's taking jobs he hates so he can pay the bills and staying constantly inebriated to dull the pain from that reality. He's totally lost, and Bob communicates all of that in every moment. No matter what his business on screen is, he's always communicating that entire reality. And as an adult now, with my fair share of disappointments and failures, I see Eddie Valiant as the first character I ever got to know who personified who I am, just one tragedy and a few bad coping mechanisms away from becoming. The entire film is a tribute to detective noir. I'm not saying any of these elements are novel in Roger Rabbit. I'm just saying that this was the first time fantasy and deep human reality were apparent to me in a film. And I think even at 12 years old, I sensed that humanity. Certainly in the years that followed, I have. It is Bob Hoskins as Eddie Valiant that sent me looking for more 1940s detective yarns. I've read Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett because of Eddie Valiant. I've fallen in love with The Big Sleep, The Maltese Falcon, The Third Man, Double Indemnity, Chinatown, Blood Simple, and even The Big Lebowski because I first came to know Eddie Valiant. Who Framed Roger Rabbit was also one of my first experiences with understanding how wonderful a story of redemption can be on film. It is absolutely formulaic, but Bob grounds his character's progression from cynical, pathetic drunk to selfless hero in a way that is both poignant for the adult and understandable to the child. There are probably 1,000 other films that could be the first redemption story to really impact a person, but for me, it was Bob Hoskins as Eddie Valiant in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. My love of movies is part of what makes me who I am, and I believe I owe that love and that piece of myself to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and in particular to Bob Hoskins. So thank you, Bob. Your work has made a definitive difference in my life. I can only hope someone can say that same thing for me one day. And so, as is loosely a tradition here on the Parley, we want to toast Bob and pour out a shot for him. I think it's only fitting that we do so with a toast that Eddie Valiant made himself. Let me pour our shots here. One for myself, one for Eddie, who probably wouldn't drink since he gave up the booze at the end of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and of course that was sort of the beginning of his redemption. All right, Mike, you ready? You got your shot for Bob?
I got it.
All right. So for Bob, here's to the pencil pushers. May they all get lead poisoning, huh?
That was beautiful, man.
Thanks,
Beautiful
man.
tribute.
All right. I think we're ready to move on.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Okay.
That was a good note. We'll jump into Spider-Man from here.
From one of the greatest films of all time to the amazing Spider-Man 2.
Another one.
All right. Amazing Spider-Man 2, directed by Mark Webb, as was the first reboot. But Mike, look, I'm gonna let you go first here. You, I know, I think you helped me appreciate the first Spider-Man film, and certainly the second one. I know you love the character of Spider-Man. We haven't really talked about the first reboot film too much on the podcast, so I'm not sure how you felt about that entirely. But I know you love the character. Why don't you give us just a little bit of what you brought into this film in terms of your history and expectations and what you thought.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about this, even though you are setting me up to just rip me to shreds here. I will gladly step up here. I do. I love Spider-Man. I'm not a huge comic book reader. I think you might have stated that earlier, but most of my history with a lot of these guys came from early years watching cartoons and just doing a little bit of dabbling and having conversations with people who were far more well-read in comic books than myself, and coming to appreciate character traits. So my list is Superman's the top, but Superman's never really attainable. Spider-Man's the next because Spider-Man at least is human. And he was also fairly young and had nothing going for him. And so this is the basis of the character, and then it's just kind of like, what if you just gave an average everyday young kid a bunch of superpowers? What would they do? What kind of decisions would they make? Where would that lead them? And how would they handle a lot of the more sophisticated and malicious villains that would come by? And there's a lot to be said for the character. I just enjoy the idea of him just being able to swing around, climbing on walls. Looks like a lot of fun. And the whole New York thing is it's just a great setting. So needless to say, when the first film came out, and I guess I should say I was a huge fan of the early. In my childhood, I watched the. I shouldn't say early. It was just childhood. I watched the animated Spider-Man. It was a lot of fun. It's just a great cartoon for kids. My kids have seen a few of them, and my boy loves it. He loves Spider-Man. He's watched The Amazing Spider-Man was on TV recently. And he just eats it up, and as the lizard is terrorizing, you can just see this overwhelming look of suspense, like what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Oh my gosh! And then Peter Parker remembers the eggs, and he was like, he remembered the eggs, and he just flipped out. And it was great. It's great to watch that kind of magic sweeping over somebody else. So when the first film came out, I was actually a little bit hesitant, I guess is the best word, because I didn't know how they were going to play off a lot of the superpowers. They can be really cheesy, and the first time I saw it, I thought it was a lot of fun. This is a great way to kick off superhero films, and I thought Tobey Maguire did a good job. Willem Dafoe, I've never really been sold by Willem Dafoe. He seems like he's over the top with a lot of things,
Yeah.
and on subsequent viewings, I came to the conclusion that Spider-Man 1 is really campy. It's basically the Power Rangers of Spider-Man films because of Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin. There's a lot more that can be said along those lines, but it was essentially the first real tent pole superhero film. It's kind of kicked off everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man 2, I think, of Sam Raimi's trilogy stands as the best. Doc Ock is magnificent. I think the visuals in that film are excellent. The choreography and the fight scenes that they have is really well done and imaginative. If you're thinking about what would a person with Spider-Man's powers be able to do and how would he react, I think they nailed a lot. Spider-Man 3 is worthless. Now, moving on.
Right. What about the reboot?
So we get to the reboot, and this is 4 or 5 years later of us just kind of sitting around with the initial trilogy and leaving us with the third one. You kind of forget about how good the second one is, and the first one being so campy. Really, the only thing you're left with is the third one. And so with The Amazing Spider-Man, it felt refreshing for me to go through. I know that there's a lot of complaints about some of the Peter Parker stuff, but when you look at The Amazing Spider-Man as if it was the first one made and the other stuff didn't exist, it's not really bad. At least I didn't find that it was nearly as bad. I think that it's I'm not certain what the ratings are, but none of these films are like top-notch films.
Sure.
None of them are truly exceptionally bad. I think that both of them have kind of settled around like 75% positive in the ratings, and at least for me, that's kind of where this one fell. I thought that there was a lot that was well thought out and well done in the first Amazing Spider-Man, and when they announced Electro and some of the stuff that they were doing with Electro, I thought it was going to be over the top, and I was a little bit hesitant. But then I got the chance to go see it with my nephew, who's 11.
Mm-hmm.
So we made like a whole Spider-Man night. We saw it in 3D, and it was like we went and saw it on opening night, 3D midnight showing, and he's just a fanatic fan. So it was just like mind-blowing, and I got to watch it through his eyes and just enjoy some of the campiness. Now let me just say what I think about The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay.
The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is a true superhero film, right? So it's a comic book movie. So what does that mean? It means that the motives are shallow, reactions are overblown. Things like Spider-Man let me down, so now I have to seek revenge on the whole population, that kind of stuff, and really just screaming at the top of your lungs and getting to an 11 on the emotional reaction meter happens all detractors for me. there is that going on. I really liked The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I don't think it's a great film, but as far as a Spider-Man film, man, there's a joviality. There's just a joy in watching him swing and adopting himself and just embracing being Spider-Man. He swings through the city. He just has a blast with it. And the quips that he does with the supervillains, which are typical Spider-Man fodder, I mean, those things weren't cheesy. They weren't so cheesy that they detracted. It was just cute. Um, there's two parts to this. One of them is the Spider-Man side. One of them is the Peter Parker side. The Peter Parker side missed for me. There's a lot that's writing. There's a lot of decisions that are made that I don't think are well fleshed out. There's a lot of plot twists that happen that are really forced, and I can see how if you went to see Peter Parker, you would think that this was a bad movie. I don't think that you specifically did. I know you didn't like the movie, but
you don't know.
Oh, I know,
Mike.
You tipped your hand earlier, dude. It was everybody, even, all of the people are talking about it. I thought Electro was cool. Again, the motives were kind of dumb, but the way that they did the character, the effects that they did, the music that they did on the thing was just, I thought it was spot on, and the battle that they had with that was awesome. That being said, I think they should have just left it with Electro. I don't think that they should have included the Green Goblin. The Rhino was a toss-off. Kind of fun, but ultimately this was the story about him and Electro, and I think they could have made a lot better film if they would have just left it there. So what am I saying? Spider-Man 2 was a lot of fun. I enjoyed seeing it in 3D. I really enjoyed watching it with my nephew. I'm going to see it again, and I think I'm going to enjoy it then. So I would recommend, if you have a chance, you want something upbeat, light. I shouldn't say upbeat because it's not like a rom-com, but it is.
I'm not sure it's certain that it's not a rom-com. I don't know if Mark Webb is certain that that's true.
Well, yeah, that's definitely true. And we could talk about that in spoilers. But regardless, it's much more of like a well-intentioned action film that we just don't see a lot of on this level for Spider-Man. So,
well,
anyway, I'll pass it back for you, and you can rip it apart.
Okay, no.
We can get back to my review, which actually matters. So,
okay. A couple of corrections. First of all, Spider-Man.
This is where you can turn it off, by the way.
Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is at 94% positive on Rotten Tomatoes. Obviously, Sam Raimi's third film is probably in the 40s or 50s, and the first one, like you said, is probably in the 70s. I didn't look it up. The thing is, the reason 2 is so good is that it is a movie that doesn't use terrible logic when it comes to motivations, or at least not as awful as, I mean, you say that all these superhero films can tend to do that, and that's one of the things that we sort of look the other way when it happens and just take it, except that first of all, I want to say great job taking your nephew, because it really helps you enjoy bad movies when you have a youngster into it. I've noticed that with my son. I have a 12-year-old, and we watch stuff that I wasn't too hip on the first time around, and then I watch it with him, and it's like, this is a lot of fun. I loved Captain America way more with him. Right. I remember thinking it was okay the first time and annoyed with the ending, but I really enjoyed it the second time through with him. His first comment coming out of Amazing Spider-Man 2 was, I don't think I really understand Electro's motivation. If my 12-year-old son is saying, this is preposterous, then you could have done a better job. Now, at the same time, when it comes to comic books, you're right. That's what they do. He idolizes somebody and then perceives a slight from that
Right.
idol, and all of a sudden he's a supervillain. And I think there are better handled examples of that sort of arc, that aren't as unsatisfying as this one was. But let me go with what I was going to say originally was that I was very disappointed with the first film. Uh, but like you say, a lot of the reason why I was so disappointed was that the movie had already been made before. So it wasn't
Right.
a reboot and a reimagining. It was a beat for beat remake. So I thought it was, one, incredibly pointless as it followed the first Sam Raimi film almost beat for beat. Two, incredibly boring with far too much Peter Parker business and not nearly enough Spider-Man. Because I think people come in knowing that this is going to be two different movies, right? But like with Spider-Man 2, the Peter Parker stuff complemented the Spider-Man stuff. You didn't have to look at them as two separate movies. And then 3, with regards to the first Amazing Spider-Man, I found it incredibly annoying that they recast Peter with more of a heartthrob character who then is pretending that he's a loner and a nerd, basically by stuttering constantly. The upside was pretty much Emma Stone and then the little action that there was in the film. And maybe a little bit of Dennis Leary. Gotta love Dennis Leary, right?
Oh yeah, he's
Flash
great.
forward to the
Great.
sequel. And I figured the sequel would have to be better because, one, there was no way they'd follow Spider-Man 2 beat for beat, so at least we'd have a new story. Two, there's simply no way they'd repeat all of the inept and boring character business with Peter Parker, and we'd probably see a lot more action. And as far as the annoying portrayal of faux nerd Parker by Garfield, well, maybe if the other two pieces were fixed, I wouldn't care as much about his idiotic stammering. It turns out, though, that only one of those assumptions was true. This is, in fact, a different movie from Spider-Man 2 with Doc Ock. However, even though there seems to be more action in Amazing Spider-Man 2, they seem to have ramped up the boring interpersonal aspects to keep pace. So what we have is a gigantically long, nearly 2.5-hour film with, quite honestly, fantastic action set pieces, broken up by eye-rollingly boring scenes of Peter's internal struggle with himself and his relationship with Gwen, all of which are 3 times longer than they need to be because of all the stammering and repetitiveness. I swear, there was no script.
Wow.
Mark Webb just said, okay, guys, this scene is about Peter not wanting Gwen to go to London. Make some shit up, and action. And then they just go, and then he wouldn't edit any of it out. It just goes on forever and ever. So even though we've got a whole bunch of really innovative action, and it's great, it's a bunch of fun. And if I could look at a movie as if it were 2 movies and say, well, I really liked it from one of the 2 movies it was, I would say I liked it. But I can't do that because it's possible to integrate the 2, and this one did not do it. The overall fun factor is reduced with the scenes of Peter and Gwen, and I mean, not to say that Emma Stone is a bad performer. I think Garfield is it Andrew Garfield? Is it Anthony Garfield? I can't remember. Andrew Garfield. I think he's actually a talent. It's just where he's gone with this character and what they've asked him to do, I don't buy for a moment. And then because of the lack of investment in those characters, when we get to a particular moment that could be potentially very emotional, it ends up just feeling really awkward because you're thinking, oh my gosh, I should really care about this, and I really don't. So in the end, just like the first film, this one just feels pointless. It doesn't take us anywhere new. It doesn't say anything deep or true about anything. It just has just some sort of events involving characters with cool powers, and those events, when they're using their powers, is pretty cool. I mean, Electro does kind of look like Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin or whatever it was, right? But Spider-Man webbing around and fighting is a lot of fun. And yeah, the quippy little, I mean, the quips are all bad, but you kind of respect it because that's what Spider-Man does. So I get that. It was just all of the hemming and hawing and business between him and Gwen. Uh, anyway, those are the big issues I had with it. There are a lot of smaller pieces that I thought were wasted, and we can nitpick on those a little bit later. But I would say, hey, look, the action is so good. It's You're not gonna feel like you were cheated out of your money. It's just that this could be a much better film. It could just be a lot better. So I didn't think it was. I thought it was good in terms of action scenes, but I thought it was a bad movie.
Like overall.
Right. Well, the whole movie is not good.
Because you talked about it being 2 movies.
Well, it's one movie.
I'm just saying, make up your mind.
No, you talked about it being 2 movies. I understand why you're saying that, but I don't think I can't separate the two out and say that I like the whole because I liked part of the whole. In this case, you know what I mean? Like, I would probably watch it again because the action is so great. But
Right.
I would watch it with a remote control in my hand, and I would fast forward through everything. But that's the stuff that's supposed to be giving context and a way for us to be drawn in on any kind of level besides just like watching a sporting event. You know what I mean? Like, this is a story. And this movie doesn't work as a good story. It does not work as a good story. It works as individual pieces of action. And that's not a movie. So the movie is a bad movie.
Yeah, I disagree. Because I think you can have. I mean, I get what you're saying. On the whole, if you're looking at every aspect and weighing them against each other, but I don't think anybody comes into this thinking that they're going to see some great character piece. You know what I mean?
But I'm not. I feel like that's mischaracterizing what I'm saying. I'm saying a baseline competence for storytelling. So Spider-Man 2 gets 95% positive, and this gets 55% because Spider-Man 2 meets that sort of minimum integration of the two halves so that we have a story, an actual story being told where we reasonably believe motivations, we reasonably believe why somebody is either in a relationship or not in a relationship and tortured by their status thereof, right? And because just the minimum level of competence has been met, then the action is a lot of fun, and the whole thing functions together as a whole unit, as one good story, one good movie. So I've got a low bar here for what is like a minimum level of decent storytelling. I'm not looking for like Oscar caliber, drama and performances and nuance. I'm just looking for baseline
logic.
Yeah, and I felt like this movie failed to meet those, which is why I actually have like halfway through the movie, I remember thinking, oh, I'm kind of enjoying this. The more the movie went on, I realized, wait a second, I'm not enjoying this. And as we walked out of the theater, I thought, well, it was all right. But the more time has gone, I've realized, no, it's not. It's not good. It's not okay. I'm starting to hate this movie because that's where you're like,
wow.
You have time to think about like whether the stuff actually worked, and if it did, it will hold on and make a cohesive whole, and if it didn't, it just falls apart as you start to think about it and try to revisit those moments, and you start realizing like, why the hell was the scene about the laundry? It went on for 5 minutes and it served zero purpose. You know what it was like? It was like when Spider-Man was in the funnies, right? Like the comics
way back when.
in the newspaper, and it was 3 or 4 frames, and it was like you see Spider-Man. Oh, cool! I'm gonna read. Oh, it's just this kid talking. Zit. And it's like they went to those comics and were like, look at how much boring crap they got to do, and it was considered a comic. Let's just do that with our movie. Let's just have scenes where people talk and don't further the narrative at all. And that's what Mark Webb apparently has no editor. It just whatever he shot gets put out on film. They could have cut 35 minutes out of this movie. It would have been at least less boring. maybe not good, but at least it would have been less boring.
Yeah, so everything you just said, I feel about the first Captain America. Like
Oh,
all of the logical
okay.
decisions were just worthless,
Okay.
and the more I thought about it, the more I was just like it overcame how much I enjoyed the action sequences. On this
Okay.
one, I sidebarred all of the Peter Parker stuff before I went in. Like
Uh-huh.
I knew the only reason I'm here is to see action. It's like when you go see a kung fu movie, which I get you're not into like the kung fu that kind of stuff. Like I doubt if I said, "Hey, have you seen the Raid 2?" You'd be like, "I went and saw it on opening day."
Right.
See, you
I'm
yeah,
interested.
right, because the Raid is like becoming an
Sure. It's
awesome
a thing.
household name.
Right. It's a thing.
But if I said, "Have you seen any of the Grandmaster?" If I or any of Jet Li's films, like, do you just go and see those? You'd say no, and I get that. But that's
Sure.
why you go see those films.
Okay.
So there's a palette for this kind of stuff.
Sure.
Um, and for me, the more I think about Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the more I think about the awesome action and how well they did
Fair
a lot
enough.
of that choreography, and the effects for it was just top notch. Um, which is for me, I'm not going to see Spider-Man because I want to see character development. I want to see a dude fighting bad guys in an awesome, spectacular way. Now you and I we could go back and forth on the whole Aunt May scene, but I feel like we're nitpicking. Um, the, there's I love Sally Field. I think she's
Oh,
just
she's awful in
charismatic
this
and
movie.
wonderful. I thought she
Terrible.
was fine.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
But what she was given was just so pointless.
yeah,
Every single scene
there was
was
one movie
pointless.
where one moment where I was like, that didn't need to be in there. It was the part where they were in the hospital and she was just like, "Hey, it's back on!
Yeah,
Yay, let's
the power's
go!"
back on. She's not even a nurse. She's taking nursing classes.
Yeah.
I'm taking
Uh,
nursing classes and working as a wait. Like even that made no sense. You know what I mean? Like, wait a second. Exactly what is going on? Is
but
she a nurse
you have to
or is
wonder
she?
like what she's like. Ben was the main provider, and now she's got to be doing something. So they had to throw something in to say, like, how is it that they've maintained the house? They
But
could have
here's the
said like
thing:
they
if
owned
they
it
were
outright,
that,
and they didn't.
but if they were making the movie that you went to see, which is this is the problem. Then, if what they're making is basically a great martial arts movie, you know what I mean, like an action film, then you minimize what you do is you minimize all the other stuff because you've got to recognize nobody cares about that, right? They're coming to see this other stuff. So yes, it has to be there to kind of complete the story, but it's minimized. Here it occupies 60 minutes of screen time, maybe even 75 minutes of the 150 is the quote unquote storytelling aspect, right? This behind the
Right, the
scenes and
Peter
whatnot.
Parker deal and that
Right.
whole
The
right.
fact that there's that much either means that they are incompetent at realizing what kind of film they're making and how much of that stuff they need, or they
Or
did it on purpose and are incompetent at executing it. Either way, it's incompetent, right? So I'm like
yeah, I don't know that I would say that
I
those are
agree
the only
with
two
you in
options.
terms of that, in terms of like the way you walk in to consume this movie. I hear what you're saying. I think that's a good point. If you're going just for the kicks and the flips, then maybe it could be entertaining business. The problem is that like if there's just a ton of time in between the kicks and the flips, that sort of subverts your
Sure.
attempts to enjoy it.
But you gotta here's the third option, right? So, and I'm not saying that they're not incompetent at telling stories. What I'm saying is they're packing a ton in with what they set up for with the Sinister Six and uh, the Green Goblin and everything that happened with him, and then uh, building up towards what's going to happen with the future with Peter Parker's dating status. Man, it's really hard to dance around that one.
Right.
Um, they packed too much in, which is why I said this just needed to be about him and Electro. You know what I mean? They're building so much, which is why I think they're only going for 3, because this one was the build. Like they're gonna introduce somebody for the next one. They may do 4, maybe, if they decide not to pack as much in. But they were shooting for the moon, and they they had a lot of duct tape to get there, and they were just putting everything in as shallowly as possible. So I'm not saying it's not incompetence. I'm just saying that they went for way more than they should have, and that's what happened. That's why the third of Sam Raimi's was so terrible, is because it's all they tried to do so much with it, and you got to just stick with one and let it develop and let it kind of blossom, and you get Spider-Man 2 with Doc Ock. And if they had done that, we'd be having a different conversation, I think.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, you said that it's basically an Electro movie. I just found Electro the compelling, if anything was compelling, it was Harry, right? I mean, the whole Electro is like, if this had just been a movie about Electro, then his completely absurd motivations for rampaging.
Right.
Now, granted, if they weren't dealing with all the other stuff, they maybe could have spent some more time
Right.
with him
That's
and
what I'm
just
saying.
made him, a compelling villain with a compelling story. I I sort of like. I mean, I was curious to see where they were going to go with Harry, but even with Harry, it's like we just need to get everybody pissed with Spider-Man as soon as we
Right.
can. So this first tiniest little slight that happens, everybody's just like, we need to kill him now,
Well, yeah, exactly.
which didn't it just didn't make a ton of sense. And other people have criticized Dane DeHaan for his performance. I actually thought it was reasonably good. And I was going to ask you, is he the Green Goblin, or is he isn't there another villain called the Hobgoblin?
Right. So the story that I initially
Which
came to
that's
understand.
sort of spoilery, I guess. I mean, even though I think.
Well, they show him in the trailers.
Okay.
So the fact that he transforms isn't necessarily a huge surprise. If you pay attention, you'd get the gist. But the huge story that I had been aware of, which really compelled me to want to see the films, was the Green Goblin is Norman Osborn. He just goes crazy trying to find the super soldier serum and injects himself. And Harry, who's Norman's son, finds his father killed with Spider-Man standing by, and blames Spider-Man for the death of his father. So we essentially have the first Spider-Man, the first of Sam Raimi's.
Right.
The compelling part was that Harry goes on to hate Spider-Man, but has no idea that it's his best friend.
Right.
So he becomes the Hobgoblin, and you have these two characters who are just battling in absolute hate with each other, and then going back home and then calling each other and being like, "Hey guy, how you doing, man? What's happening?" And just not even realizing. And so then it's about who realizes what first, and then how does that play out. And
again, so Spider-Man 2 is Sam Raimi.
Right. And so you have a lot of compelling stuff. So I don't know how they're playing this, if they're going to call, as far as Spider-Man 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is concerned, if Harry's becoming the Green Goblin. Again, though, this is a different line of comic books, from what I understand. And again, I'm not anywhere near the comic book aficionado that maybe should be commenting on this, but
Okay.
I don't know exactly the differences between the Amazing Spider-Man and just Spider-Man, and whether or not who plays what role. But I know that there's some names that do appear in both of them, like the Green Goblin and whatnot. So
Okay.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see exactly where they go. I know that they're pushing for several things, and they hinted at a lot of things there at the end, which would be really cool to see if they do visually what they've done. Just visually, the tone of the film I thought was just cool to watch. And again, it was 3D, and I thought there was a moment specifically towards the end that I thought might be one of the best 3D films I've ever seen.
Oh, that's cool.
Like, definitely worth seeing for 3D. So.
Okay.
But I also saw it at the Draft House, so let's plug them and let everybody know the Draft House is the best.
Yeah.
It's the best.
You gotta see. Actually, dude, when I'm out there,
Yep.
we gotta go every night.
Yep.
All right.
Like almost every night.
So right,
at least once.
Except for probably June 14th.
Yeah. And 15th.
15th. Well, you might want to sit in a chair and watch a movie on the 15th.
That's probably true.
So yeah, you know what? I don't know anything about the Sinister Sticks. That would be a really lame villain cooperative. The Sinister Sticks. um, I gather, it's a band of ne'er do wells that the Green Goblin sort of bankrolls and keeps together. I It should be interesting because I really like Doc Ock and his story from
Right.
Spider-Man 2. If eh, you know, if they just strap the claws onto somebody else, that's going to be kind of disappointing. And that's where I've like they might tease the Sinister Six. I can't say it. Sinister Six. At the end of this film, and I get it. Like if they jump right in and do all of them, but I think it'd be great. Like take a page out of the Marvel universe and give each villain its own origin story film, or at least do
Right.
a couple of them in number 3, a couple of them in number 4, and then bring them all together for number 5. But I don't have any trust in this group of people's ability to tell a story based on the 2 films that
Sure.
they have
Sure.
produced. So I don't know that I want to see five of those either. Again, I'll go see them because I love watching Spider-Man zip around the city, and I love what they do fight-wise. But create when you create fight rules that not only defy logic but defy physics.
Oh, we're back to Captain America.
No,
Go ahead.
no. I don't feel I don't know that just I could be well look I feel like I'm wanting to touch on some spoiler stuff I guess so
Did we
unless
just? Did we just? We just
transition
crossed into
to
spoilers.
spoiler gonna
Spoilers.
spoil the
Spoil it
Spider-Man
for you. We're gonna do it for you.
amazing spoilers too.
We're gonna spoil all of it for you. We're gonna do all of the spoilers. It's all happening.
So the big spoiler is this movie is disappointing. Don't go see it.
No, you already tipped your hat on that one.
Okay, all right.
It was a lot of fun.
Disagree. Well, there are parts that are fun. So I don't know. I was just really annoyed with like one of the few Peter Parker scenes that I thought was actually a good scene was him trying to figure out the whole battery thing, right? Like that was actually I didn't mind watching that. Most everything else, it couldn't end quickly enough. But him trying to figure out how to, like anytime Electro touches the webs, it travels up his wrists and explodes his shooters. So how are we going to fix that? And that's a big thing, right?
Right,
Like,
right.
how are you going to fix this?
How are you gonna
Then
mix
the
Spider-Man
way
with
they
fire?
fix it,
Totally
I
realistic.
think, is completely made
No.
up. No,
What do
no.
you say?
You don't. I mean,
I'm
look,
just getting you, man.
I could be wrong here, and I mean I have a degree in physics, but I've
It's like-
forgotten
Like
things,
theoretical
right?
physics. But
Well,
it's not like-
it was 15 years ago or more. Ugh, it was more. No, it was about 15 years ago, right? And I can explain how you can magnetize a nail with a coil of wire and a current. I can explain that a little bit. It never has there gone with it the idea that it would then hold a charge as if it were a capacitor or a battery. Furthermore, the shape of the nail. Look, I don't. This sounds like I'm being a total nerd, right? But like, there are things that are possible in this world, and there are things that are not possible in this world, and they basically said we're gonna bank on knowing what possible is, and we're just gonna say these
they were right.
words, and it's gonna seem like it's a brilliant solution. And so they hook jumper cables to his wrist, and presumably I think the only way that would work would be if there was a coil of wire around both of them, and even then, the fact that they're basically squares, I don't think that's going to magnetize them, much less permanently magnetize them. Plus, I don't think in any sense they would hold a charge, much less more than a car battery would have, which is what he already tested the whole thing on, and it blew up because it was overcharged, by whatever he was feeding it, presumably by electro. Like, look, why introduce it as a problem if you're just going to solve it by saying, it's not really a problem. It's so much not a problem, we're just going to invent this way that it's not a problem anymore. The end. Like, that was just...
That
Good.
was
Are
a
we...
hurdle that I didn't get over.
It was... Is it nitpicky? Maybe. But...
Well, here's the thing. Like they make it such a focal point of the whole conflict between him and Electro that they have to do something, right? And when you like, I don't know enough about charges and magnetism and storing a charge in a battery to be able to say whether or not if you were to pass a secondary charge that was greater over something, if that charge would then be negated. And so it seems like Electro would be able to overcome the charge that they gave to his web shooters. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and furthermore, like,
Definitely.
let's just make the battle about something else.
Exactly.
Like, can we just move?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Pick
you know what I mean?
anything
like,
else.
That was something dumb.
Pick anything else that Spidey couldn't handle earlier on, and then he can overcome that. But you try to make it physics based, and then you fantasied it into a non-issue, and then the whole it wasn't the logic that well, he's electrical, so basically he's like a battery, and if you overcharge it, he'll explode. Like that logic jump from he's electrical to he's like a battery with a max charge. Well, batteries don't disintegrate, fly through wires, and then reintegrate on the other side. So not really like a battery at all. He's just electric.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that really bother me.
Well, here's how he was like a battery, dude. Hello. He had the little chip on his head that showed how full of a charge he carried. So
which I did not notice until it was filling up to blow him up. That was the only time I noticed it.
That's why I said it, dude. I mean, that was totally cheesy. Well, and how do you get that to reintegrate and disintegrate and then travel through wire? You know what I mean? Like, there's certain aspects of him that should not have been able to travel. So here's the deal. That scene, at least in 3D, it was entirely engrossing. Like, you are sitting there watching it, and it gives a whole like I told my nephew, he's like, "Are we gonna go see it?" And I was like, "Dude, we're gonna go see it, and we're not just gonna see it in 2D. We're gonna go see it in all of the Ds that there are." And it totally, which now I look back and I'm like, don't tell your friends that you saw all of the Ds, because that sounds bad. But like, it does, it gives this whole second aspect of perspective. Like, he actually looks like he's sitting inside this world. The way that they did it, it looked really cool, and it gave like a second value to the parallax of him flying through, which I know it's not a phrase that matters to a lot of people. I really liked it. That's what matters to a lot of people.
Okay.
It was really cool, and I just brushed off the whole web slinger thing, and I brushed off the whole, because like, if a dude's electrical, are you going to shoot your webs at him? You're not going to shoot your webs at him. You're going to shoot your webs around him.
Like, are we even certain the spider webs conduct electricity?
Exactly. That could have been a valuable question. I would like to submit Tim Dennison for the writer for the next film.
Literally, it would have been just as satisfying and logical for Emma Stone to have said, "Wait a minute, Peter. Don't you remember? Spiderwebs don't conduct electricity."
Right, and then they could have had like a little scene where he like tries to electrocute a spider and nothing happens.
But moreover, even though earlier his web shooters were definitely blown up by electrical current running, now that he just knows that they don't, he can just go fight them, and it doesn't hurt him at all. That makes as much sense as the electromagnet wristwatches. Like,
yeah, and again, I don't know enough about electromagnetics to really pick it apart and that whole like the whole theory that they put together, and maybe somebody can jump in here and be like, hey
Look,
guys,
yeah.
you're getting it wrong, and it's totally plausible. I mean, what wasn't plausible was the dude made out of electricity, and you're glossing over that because this part was
Right.
definitely based in reality. We don't know,
No,
but
I
it
get that.
seems really ridiculous.
And I get why are we arguing about that when this is obviously a movie we
Yeah.
we're allowing this electric being to exist. What I'm saying is on their own terms, they tried to say, "Hey, this will work. Like this is based in science. This should work." Um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that means
And
it
it's a little
brings it
bit
back in.
foolish.
That puts it back in our world. And look, I totally understand. I could be forgetting something. I could be forgetting something about electromagnetic nails and holding a charge, but I'm pretty sure they made that up.
You know what you're forgetting is the most important part of the spoilers that we need to talk about, which is Gwen
Yeah.
Stacy.
Yeah.
So,
So for me, I
were
hate,
you blown
I
away?
hated everything. I hated everything having to do with Gwen and Peter Parker. The entire movie. You talk about tropes that are like in movies and don't exist anywhere. Like seeing a dead person actually standing and like that only exists in movies, right? Like I think
Sure.
about dead people and it was like, oh man, I really remembered him and it was almost as if he was there with me, but nobody actually sees people standing there looking at them, right? It's only a movie convention for saying, oh well, he's thinking about so and
Right,
so,
right, right.
except for they're not just thinking about, they're actually seeing them, and then they say they're actually seeing them. Anyway, I love seeing Dennis Leary. That was fine, but here's like, and I'm getting to answer your question in just a second, but like the whole, I can't get over. I promised your dad he's dead. We have to stop this, and she says, no, we're done. And then 30 minutes later, let's just not be done anymore. We'll just love each other. It's fine. Like, why introduce stuff as dramatic elements when you're just going to undo it later without a second thought? It's just like, we're introducing it and then we'll act like we're really upset about it, and then without anything changing to change why we broke up in the first place, we'll just be back together. You know what I mean? And it'd be one thing if it was like this was the first time they had broken up, right? And they realize they can't do it, so they come back together. But clearly they had done it before, which is why she breaks up with him in the first place. So they've done this before. Anyway, that's just one of the many things about them that irritated me. And so I hated them throughout the entire movie, even though I love Emma Stone.
Yep.
I hated them the entire movie, and even so, uh, the the sight of her head snapping back and hitting that concrete was gut churning.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, but for 3 seconds, and then he's holding her and he's crying, and I'm like, yeah, but I don't care about you. You're terrible, Peter Parker. But that one moment was surprising because I had heard
Oh, did you?
I had heard rumors that they were going to kill her, and I was like, kind of going, A, I don't care because I hate these people, and B, it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like they're heading that direction. And then she starts falling, and I'm like, there's way too much time to save her, and there's no way they're going to do it. There's just not. They haven't set up for that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but that's what I'm saying, Mike. If you had set the movie up for that moment, it could be truly devastating. Her death could be like that. I don't even like a Titanic moment if you just set it up properly for us to believe in that relationship, for him to have actually found some true answers to true questions and true problems in his life, and her too, instead of just all this just movie make-believe nonsense. Then her death would be catastrophic and really set us up. What we're going to get is a third movie of him not wanting to get in a relationship with Mary Jane because she might get hurt just like the last one got hurt, and and it will be 200 minutes of boring nothingness instead of him really wrestling through having having achieved a certain piece or whatever, and then having that ripped from him. Like, I mean, they still could make good. They could make good on Gwen Stacy's death, but I don't think they will. I think they'll just use it for a cheap, like, obviously we want him to get together with Mary Jane, but we're gonna draw that out over an entire movie, just by saying, well, I don't want you to get hurt. Anyway, that's how I felt about that.
Yeah. So I was totally shocked. Like
You were
I
okay.
had I had no idea that they were planning this. I figured that this was going to be a trilogy, and that she was going to be the lady for the whole thing, and then the third was going to end with them getting married. Um, but on the way in, my 11-year-old nephew, who reads like comic book encyclopedias, was like,
Hmm.
"I thought they would kill her off by now," and I was like, "They kill her off in the comics?"
Mhm.
And he was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "That's probably not going to happen."
Right.
So I totally didn't even. With that, I didn't even think it was going to happen. I didn't think that they were going to have the balls to do it.
Hmm.
So when she dies, when her neck snaps, I was like, "What just happened?" And I was shocked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he gets down there, and I was like, "Man, that really sucks." Because for me, I figured he had made peace with her when he did the "I love you" on the bridge.
But he'd been saying that essentially the entire movie. Like, nobody was ever in doubt about that. I.
Right, right, right. But like the whole relationship was at peace. Like I'm not saying it's not shallow. I'm not saying that their relationships weren't shallow. Okay, I believe firmly that they were very shallow. I kind of swept it under the rug of saying like these are teenagers and they make stupid decisions all the time based on emotional mood swings that don't make sense. So go have fun, be teenagers, grow out of it, please. And then I felt like there was maybe a step towards that when they were on top of the bridge, and then she dies. And so there was, at least for me, I was like, that sucks for him. Like, oh,
Mhm.
Ben dies. Now this chick's dead. I can see why he would give it up. So when he does, blah, blah, blah. Then I looked down at my nephew,
Mm.
who was like, right, because remember, they're making this movie for him, right? Like, they're making this movie for
Okay.
13 to 22-year-olds. And I'll be honest, like he was looking at me like his world was shattered. Like what just happened? I can't believe they did that. That
Mm.
doesn't happen in these kind of movies. So, and this is a kid who should have been anticipating it after reading the
Mhm.
encyclopedias and the comics that he
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a genuinely well done moment. Um,
Again, yeah.
it's hard
Same.
to say. It's hard to say that that the like it was hard to say that it fulfilled any aspect like you're talking about. I would have been much happier if it was the final moment of a satisfying relationship, but you can't say that, and I'm not gonna try to make a case for that. But man, that moment was, I was just blown away, dude.
Well, I'm glad it hit. And again, I was watching, thinking, this moment right here. I'm looking at Andrew Garfield's face, and he looks really tortured. But I don't believe it because of everything that has happened for the last 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was the undoing of that moment. I wonder. It's like we've got such a powerful moment here at the end. It doesn't matter what we do until then, and it matters vitally what you do up until then, because like what you're saying on paper sounds great. He loses his uncle. Which how does his uncle die in the first film?
There's like a little convenience store robbing.
Okay.
They had gotten in a fight, and Peter went to the convenience store, and the clerk was like, "I ain't gonna give you your purchase unless you have exact change." And so he leaves without it. The convenience store gets robbed. The robber is running away, and Uncle Ben, after having the fight with Peter and Peter leaving, Uncle Ben went out to find him and comes across the robber, and a gun comes out, and Uncle Ben tries to stop him, and then ends up getting shot.
Okay. Uh, so
So Peter Parker
he's
could have
he's
stopped it.
he's lost his uncle, he's lost this girl, and if those had been significant relationships, and we know that Ben must have been significant relationship, and we've seen two movies of them making goo goo eyes at each other, so that must be significant, and you think, wow. What might that do to a person? What might that do to Spider-Man? That that could make an interesting movie, like hanging up the suit, um, while other stuff is going, like while the Sinister Six is being born. Um, I did it again. He's not being Spider-Man. But
Right.
I guess that's not even first of all, it's not a possibility because there's never any real weight given to his relationship with Ben, and there's never, I don't think, any real weight given to his relationship with Gwen. So maybe he just needs to avoid relationships with people that rhyme with N, right? So like as long as Mary Jane doesn't rhyme with Ben, so you're good. She's gonna be fine. But like I could see that as like a dark turn in a 5 movie series, where he's gonna hang up the cape, so to speak. Not a cape, but he does that at the end of this movie. Like they tack on a whole nother little movie at the end of this movie. One of the most believable emotional arcs is him not wanting to be Spider-Man anymore, and they basically montage their way through it in 10 minutes and say,
Yeah,
but he's
not even
back,
10.
not even 10, and
Yeah.
it's just over. And like, again, just a dumb decision. That we have a potential for real emotional depth and an actual story, and you skip over it. But his return, like you mentioned, do we need Rhino or whatever? In terms of launching the new films in the series, because I see more than one coming. I get it, if there's only one more coming, why do you need to end with Rhino? But I really see that as like, man, he deals, because that was what was fun about the Spider-Man 2 game, right? Is that there was one big story arc that involved
Right.
Doc Ock, right? But there were all the little minor villains that didn't make their way into the movie, but that you had to fight as part of the video game. And I felt like this was a way of saying, like, look, there's little minions like this that he's just got to constantly keep
Right.
putting down, and it kind of opens that world up a little bit, and makes it a little bit bigger, and that's fun for me. I thought the ending was the best part of the movie. I thought it was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
mad props to that because I was worried that, like halfway through the film, I was like, when are we going to see Rhino come back? Like when is that
Right.
going to happen? And the
Yeah.
fact that they saved that for like the reintroduction of him coming back to fighting crime, I thought that was a really smart decision. As opposed to like wasting more time on another villain he has to fight and just making a whole bunch of really short decisions that just get us through this. I thought that was pretty smart to bookend
Yeah.
it with that.
And if they had done I'm just spitballing here, but like, if they had done a little bit better job of making, I mean, I was surprised Electro's just dead. Like in the, like
Is he?
well, maybe, but like this is
Is he?
clearly just
Is Gwen
another
dead?
movie building towards the overarching arc. You start with
Right.
Osborn as villain, you get a new Osborn as villain, you get to see him come into his own. This is a 3 or a 4 or a 5 movie story arc, and you bring along a really powerful villain in the second one, and it's almost like you're using him, to make a whole movie when what you're
Right.
really doing is building the Harry Osborn character. And I don't like to see anybody do that. What I want to see is, I want to see a stinger where there's a blue sparkling something at a broken down generator out in the suburbs or something like that. You know what I mean? When you realize the Electro might not be gone because he's such a potentially powerful character.
Oh yeah.
You totally invented the way to get rid of him anyway. So, have him come back. Anyway, that's another direction I would have, potentially taken it to make it feel a little bit more satisfying. But mainly to make it feel more satisfying is I would have found somebody else to write the Peter Parker stuff, and maybe a different director to direct those portions too, because they all fell completely flat for me.
Yeah, and again, I think you mentioned the video game there. That's a huge component to all of this because when when you deal with the like unlike most every other superhero franchise, Spider-Man is unique because it has like a full-on, well-developed video game franchise that goes with it that people love playing. There's not really a good Batman until recently. There hasn't been a good Batman, and
Yeah.
there still isn't a good Superman video game series. Um, and so Superman or Spider-Man, when you're playing that, you are Spider-Man 100% of the time, and so that becomes a an aspect of, and like I haven't played the new one, but it becomes an aspect of it, so that being Spider-Man and engaging in the Spider-Man films is far outweighs any of the Peter Parker stuff, because you just don't engage with Peter Parker nearly as much as you do now. If you're just seeing the films, that's a different story. But for a lot of the people playing the video games, it's released the same day or the same week,
Right.
so it's an aspect of the film.
Well,
It follows the films.
we walked out of Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I haven't yet, but I wanted to go to Redbox and just
Right.
rent that thing because I mean the movie was just basically one giant commercial. For me, it's a commercial for the video game. Now, unfortunately, fortunately, I don't think Mark Webb directed the video game, and so the fact
Well, I
that
hope he did, because you're Spider-Man the whole time, which means all
no,
the
you're
awesome
not.
stuff
No, you're
in the
not.
game.
The first Spider-Man film, which you get to play as Peter Parker. So I'm
Fantastic.
guessing you get to thumb your way over to your laundry bin and pick up your laundry and then walk it downstairs and get in an argument with Aunt May, and
And you have to like choose
she
the right
takes your
answers to the
laundry,
questions.
and then you reach out and take the laundry back, and then she takes the laundry from you, and then you have to take the laundry back, and then she cries because she thinks you don't love her, and then you say, oh my gosh, how tedious was that business? So
Yeah,
bad.
that was over the top. Now, what they did in the trailer was fine, like that little back and forth that they did in the trailer, and if they had left it at that
Yeah.
for the film, that would have been fine. But yeah, they did go
Ah,
on back and forth. So, and I think that we are getting to the point where we are
we're
going
going on and back and forth. Let me ask you this though: what was happening with the disease with the Osborns, and how come it took till he was 62 to kill Norman, but in like
Harry's inbred.
2 weeks, like it goes from shakes to scales for Harry in 2 weeks. Like, what? How? What was going? What happened there? Did that make any sense to you at all? And I'm pretty
Well,
sure I've heard the disease before. I've never heard of it turning a person into a Green Goblin. Which
so yeah, my thought
Norman
was
on the Norman on
right.
the bed was like a Green Goblin.
Yeah, and
Right?
he was like, got it. That was a great moment. Like he on the bed. I wish that there was more of Norman, because they pulled off some cool stuff just in
Yeah.
those couple of
That was
moments.
super
But
creepy.
what I saw when I saw him was not somebody who was diseased, but somebody who had failed to fight the disease with cross-species genetics and potions and all kinds of stuff to try to fix it. You
Okay,
know what I
so
mean?
he
Like all
yeah.
those things
Okay,
were
fair enough.
remnants of that. Now, why then would Harry have scales? Who knows?
Right, why is he
That's
getting that?
retarded.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't mean that in the bad way. I mean that in the socially viable way. Okay, that's how I mean that word.
I'm, I'm not, I'm not sure if you just say, it's like basically it's like the web shooters. If we just say this, it's
Yeah,
true,
yeah,
right? We'll just
right.
say it.
There.
I mean, it's
See,
true.
just because people don't understand that there is a socially viable way doesn't mean that it doesn't
That there
exist. So it's out
isn't
there,
one.
and that's the context that I'm using that term in.
Fair enough. Um,
And I just introduced that to all the people. So you're welcome.
you're welcome, people. You now know that it's okay to say that word. Well, thanks, Mike. I think you're right. I think we are probably done with this analysis of the not so amazing Spider-Man 2 from my perspective. The fully enjoyable Amazing Spider-Man 2 from Mike's. Uh, Traditionally, we talk a little bit about what's new on Netflix, what's coming up in the theater, what's coming up on Blu-ray. Quite honestly, I have scanned InstantWatcher.com for what's been coming out over the last couple weeks, and nothing is jumping out at me on Netflix as really, really worth watching. I will tell you that my family is watching Justice League, the early 2000s cartoon series, and it's wonderful. We are thoroughly enjoying the ridiculousness of that series, and it's fun to know that
Yeah,
hey, it's
Wonder
small.
Woman's great.
it's small at this point. You know, it's just the 7 of them, but eventually it becomes Justice League Unlimited, and then it gets super crazy after that. So we've been enjoying that. Maybe check that out. Besides that, I mean, there's a lot out there. Kill Bill 1 and 2 are on Netflix right now. There's a lot out there, but I'm sorry we don't have a whole lot to recommend that's new to Netflix at this point. Coming up into theaters in the next couple weeks, keep your eyes open for Neighbors. That's the Seth Rogen and Zac Efron comedy from the same team that brought us not The World's End, but what was the other one? This Is the End, which, all things considered, is a pretty entertaining film.
Yeah.
Neighbors is shaping up to be a pretty, it sounds like a pretty well-received, over-the-top comedy from the same team. So that's coming out on May 9th, along with a couple of the other films that simply sound terrible. And then May 16th, one of my most anticipated films of the year in terms of just, hoping it's just a loud, fun, good time. Godzilla is finally hitting.
Oh yeah.
So the last Godzilla, awful. This Godzilla, directed by a guy who made Monsters, which should be on Netflix. If you want to see, in prep for Godzilla, look up Monsters on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. And do yourself a favor and look up the budget for that film when you're done. If you didn't think it was amazing, then after you see what they did it for, your mind will be blown. So that's coming out on May 16th. At the same time, $1 Million Arms, our next sports film, is coming out. And that's John Hamm. It's a Disney film based on a true story about. It's a baseball story. I'm not watch the trailer. You'll figure out what it's about. So those are coming up. New to Blu-ray. Apparently, we're getting Veronica Mars. I'm assuming that's not the series, that's the movie that's going to be released on Blu-ray on May 6th. And then we're also going to finally get, I didn't see it in the theater, so I'm excited to be able to check out Her on Tuesday the 13th on Blu-ray, as well as, I won't be checking out I, Frankenstein on the 13th for certain, but that's coming out, as well as Fast and Furious 6. I thought that was already out on Blu-ray. So I'm just Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was already.
All right. Well, that's those are the new Blu-ray releases coming up in the next couple of weeks. I will go back just one more time, if you're interested in checking out some of Bob Hoskins' work on through streaming, you can catch Roger Rabbit on Netflix. Hook is also on Netflix. Snow White and the Huntsman, his final performance, you can rent that through iTunes or Vudu. The really terrific Hollywoodland that stars Adrian Brody and Ben Affleck, as well as Bob Hoskins, of course, and Diane Lane. You can rent that on Amazon, iTunes, or Vudu. And then what's considered, if Eddie Valiant is not Bob's finest performance, then generally his performance in The Long Good Friday is considered to be his top performance. He co-stars with Helen Mirren in that film. And if you are a Hulu subscriber, you can watch that for free. Plus, I think there are some other digital rental options. So maybe look into The Long Good Friday. I am certainly going to look into it. I'm going to watch that in the next week, if at all possible, just to honor Bob's memory and see some more of his great work. But that is, I believe that's it for the show, Mike.
Yeah, that's all I got, man.
All right. Well, as always, thank you. Thank you for getting on and chatting with me. Thanks to Viola, Minium, and David Whitman for joining us and sending in some questions. You added a fun element to the show. And you can friend us on Facebook, we're the Film Parley. You can follow us on Twitter at Film Parley. You can email me at tim@filmparley.com. And we'd love to hear from you, incorporate your opinion and take into our next show, which will probably be in about a week. We're going to try and get back on the wagon here and get you some consistent content. So here's hoping we do
Oh,
that. Mike, until then, boat drinks.
Boat drinks. That went way longer than I thought.
What is your recording time at?
I'm at 2 hours and 3 minutes.
Oh no.
What are you at?
I don't have time. I upgraded. They don't have a regular time. It's just measures. They just count measures now on GarageBand.
Oh, that's dumb. I wonder if that's a setting you could change.
But that's a pretty good conversation, though. Screw it. It just is what it is, Mike. People
It is what it is.
They can listen, they could not listen. Whatever. We just got to do our thing, have a fun conversation. We knew it could potentially go long. Maybe I'll cut out the transcendence bit, but whatever. I guess we're still broadcasting on YouTube. Hey, everybody's listening. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.